How avoidants chase silently, but super empaths don't notice their interest. Avoidants don't chase loudly. They don't run after you with words or grand gestures. Instead, their pursuit is quiet, subtle and often invisible, a kind of silent longing that most people never notice until it's too late. It's not that they don't care, or that they've moved on entirely. It's that they have a very particular way of engaging, one that keeps them emotionally safe while still keeping you in their mind. If you've ever been involved with someone avoidant, you might have felt this strange push and pull. One moment it feels like they're distant, even indifferent. The next, there's a small action, a text, a like, a seemingly casual message, that leaves you wondering if they were thinking about you all along. That subtlety is the hallmark of how avoidants chase. They don't make it obvious. They don't create drama or emotional turbulence to get your attention. Their actions are carefully measured, quiet ripples rather than waves, leaving you guessing about their intentions. This kind of silent pursuit can be confusing, especially for those who are naturally empathetic. You might sense their presence without understanding what it means, or you might assume they've completely moved on. But the truth is, avoidants have their own internal rhythms of desire and connection. They chase differently because their fear of vulnerability runs deep. They're not reckless in love, they're strategic, cautious and protective of their emotional space. Yet within this careful distance lies an unmistakable pattern, a pattern that signals interest even when it's hidden. Recognizing these subtle signs is tricky because avoidants never present their feelings in the open. Their chase is layered, often invisible, and easily mistaken for disinterest. But make no mistake, it's there. And if you know what to look for, you can start to see the quiet ways they reach out, the unspoken efforts that show they care without saying it outright. In this video, we're going to break down 5 hidden phases of how avoidants chase you silently, the patterns and behaviors that most people completely miss. These phases reveal the subtle intentions behind their actions and help you understand what's really happening beneath the surface. So let's get started with phase number 1. The internal chase. Even though avoidants don't chase loudly, there's a part of them that begins the pursuit quietly, entirely inside their own mind. At first it's completely internal, a private, almost secret activity that only exists in their thoughts. They think about reaching out, crafting messages in their head, imagining conversations, and picturing your reactions. Every small detail of your interactions plays in their mind like a loop, but at the same time, they fear exposure. The idea of actually sending a message or making a move feels too vulnerable, too risky, so they hold back, trapped between wanting to connect and the instinct to protect themselves. Now here's the thing most people miss. While all of this is happening, they don't make it visible in any obvious way. You might notice nothing at all. They don't leave clues or signals intentionally. Even when they replay shared moments in their mind, or wonder what you're doing, there's no outward sign that they're thinking about you. This internal chase is invisible because they are masterful at containing their feelings. So if you're on the receiving end, it may seem like they've completely moved on or lost interest, but the reality is very different. Their mind is very much occupied with you, even if their behavior doesn't show it. The challenge then is learning how to notice it. Because it's internal, you have to pay attention to subtle patterns and small hints in their actions or timing. For instance, they may suddenly send a seemingly casual text after a period of silence, not because they've decided to chase you openly, but because their internal longing finally finds a safe way to express itself. Or maybe they react to something you post, like a story or comment, in a way that seems random but is actually their way of staying connected from a safe distance. These are small, almost imperceptible signs, but they reveal that the internal chase is real. Once you know what to look for, you'll start noticing patterns that previously seemed like coincidences, a quiet thought turning into a subtle action, a hesitation masked as casual behavior. So while it might feel like nothing is happening on the surface, the truth is that this internal chase is the very first step in how avoidants show interest. It's a quiet pull of longing, a careful mental rehearsal of connection that only becomes visible through small indirect actions. The next time you think they're distant or detached, remember that much of their pursuit begins in their mind, far from your eyes, and the clues are hidden in tiny thoughtful gestures. Noticing these moments is the key to understanding the subtle ways they're reaching for you, even when they never speak the words aloud. Phase 2, the return after retreat. After the internal chase, avoidants often take a step back. They retreat, creating space between themselves and you, sometimes leaving you wondering if they've lost interest completely. But this withdrawal isn't the end. It's often the beginning of the next stage of their subtle pursuit. When they pull away, it's not because they no longer care, it's because distance gives them the safety they need to process their feelings without feeling exposed. Ironically, the moment they start to miss you, that same distance allows their emotions to surface more clearly. They begin noticing what's absent: your energy, your presence, the small ways you influence their thoughts and emotions, and that awareness quietly nudges them back toward you. What's tricky for most people is that this return is rarely obvious. Avoidants don't announce their longing with grand gestures or dramatic declarations. Instead, it shows up in small, almost accidental moments: a random text after weeks of silence, a subtle like on your post, or a story reaction that seems casual but carries meaning. These are their gentle ways of testing the waters, seeing if you're still emotionally available without putting themselves at risk. Essentially, each small action asks two unspoken questions: do I still have access to you, and is it safe to approach again? They're checking if the connection can be revived safely, without fear of being hurt or rejected. And while it may seem trivial on the surface, these subtle gestures are the real signals of their internal chase taking form in the outside world. Most people fail to notice these signs because they're so quiet, so carefully measured. You might see the text and assume it's casual, or notice the like on your post and think it's nothing, but each action is loaded with meaning from their perspective. The key to understanding this phase is to slow down and pay attention to patterns rather than isolated incidents. Look for moments where they appear after a pause, the timing of their messages, the way they interact with your social media or shared spaces. These are breadcrumbs of interest they leave unintentionally. When you start recognizing the timing and subtlety of their actions, you begin to see the method behind the distance and the care behind the quiet return. So even when they seem to vanish, it's often the precursor to a soft approach. The withdrawal is not rejection, it's preparation. And when they reappear, it's their way of testing the emotional climate, seeing if they can safely reconnect without losing control or exposing themselves too much. By paying attention to these subtle returns, you can notice the quiet way they chase, the invisible thread that keeps connecting them to you. This phase shows that avoidance doesn't equal disinterest. It's a carefully calculated rhythm of approach and retreat that allows them to engage without fear. Understanding this is key to seeing the full picture, because every small step they take after retreat is part of a silent, patient, and deeply intentional pursuit. Phase 3, control as connection. After pulling away and then returning subtly, avoidants often move into a stage where their need for connection is balanced with their need for control. They crave closeness, but only on terms that feel safe to them. This is a crucial part of their silent chase. They want to feel connected without losing their emotional boundaries. They'll find ways to reinsert themselves into your life in small doses, enough to maintain a sense of intimacy, but not enough to feel vulnerable or trapped. It's a careful dance where they test the waters, gauging how close they can get without feeling exposed. These moments of connection might appear random or inconsistent, but for an avoidant, each interaction is a precise measure of their comfort and control. The tricky part for most people is that these actions are easy to miss or misinterpret. You might notice a sudden message after a period of quiet, or an unexpected gesture that seems casual, but in reality, it's their way of maintaining proximity without fully engaging. They might show up for a conversation, comment on a post, or send a brief note, then disappear again just as quickly. On the surface, it looks like inconsistency or even disinterest. But what's really happening is a subtle testing of boundaries. They are seeing whether they can remain near you without losing the sense of safety they desperately need. This stage is about measuring emotional distance, and it's why avoidants often seem unpredictable. The pull toward you is there, but it's always moderated by their internal need for control. To notice this phase, you have to pay attention to patterns and context rather than isolated actions. Small appearances after silence, measured responses, and interactions that are just enough to maintain presence are all signs that they're trying to stay connected while protecting themselves. Most people don't see this because the actions are subtle and the intention is carefully hidden. Avoidants are masters at balancing desire with fear, so the gestures you might dismiss as casual are often their way of keeping the connection alive. The key is to recognize the rhythm: a step forward, a pause, a step back. When you notice that pattern, it becomes clear that their actions are intentional, not random. This phase teaches an important lesson: avoidants chase differently, and understanding the method behind their approach is crucial. They are not indifferent or cold, they are protecting themselves while still wanting to feel close to you. By observing their subtle steps, you can start to see the quiet effort they put into maintaining connection. The presence they maintain, though not constant, is meaningful. It shows that they're engaged in a slow, cautious pursuit, always testing the boundaries of intimacy without letting go of emotional safety. Recognizing these small gestures and the underlying intention allows you to see their silent chase clearly, the invisible thread of connection that they never announce, but consistently nurture. Phase 4. Emotional mirroring. After showing up in small doses, avoidants often move into a stage that's subtle but powerful: emotional mirroring. This is where their silent chase becomes less about direct contact and more about tuning into your inner world. They start to unconsciously reflect your tone, your humor, the way you react emotionally, almost as if they're echoing your rhythm. It's not calculated in a manipulative sense, it's their mind's way of recreating the connection they felt before while keeping themselves at a safe distance. They can feel the comfort of familiarity without having to fully expose their own vulnerability, and that comfort pulls them closer in ways that aren't always obvious. Most people completely miss this stage because it's invisible if you're not paying attention. You might notice that conversations with them start to feel oddly familiar, that their jokes begin to match your style, or that their tone shifts in ways that mimic your own. Maybe they respond in ways that mirror your excitement, your sadness, or your enthusiasm. These small adjustments aren't coincidences, they are a reflection of their attempt to rebuild closeness without having to explicitly say, "I miss you" or "I care." Many people dismiss it as coincidence or think they're just being friendly, but it's a clear signal that their mind and emotions are quietly syncing with yours, which is one of the most understated ways they maintain a connection. To notice this phase, you need to be intentional about observing patterns rather than isolated moments. Pay attention to subtle shifts in the way they communicate, the way they react to your messages, and how their energy seems to match yours more often than not. Most people don't consciously register this because it feels natural, like they're just being present. But in reality, it's a reflection of their internal chase, a silent echo of the bond they're still invested in. By noticing these mirrored behaviors, you can see the underlying desire without them ever having to voice it. Their goal isn't confrontation or drama, it's comfort. They're chasing a sense of familiarity that reminds them of the closeness they once felt, and they do it quietly, in ways that make it almost invisible to the casual observer. Understanding this stage gives you insight into the subtlety of avoidant pursuit. They are not always overtly expressive, but their actions, tone, and behavior often reveal more than words ever could. When you pay attention to these mirrored patterns, you start to see the hidden care, the unspoken longing, and the quiet ways they maintain the connection. It's a gentle reminder that avoidance doesn't equal absence. Even when they seem distant or restrained, they are internally engaged, slowly and carefully chasing the emotional bond they value. Recognizing this allows you to see the invisible thread they're following, one that doesn't shout its presence but consistently shapes the way they reconnect with you. 5. The return to safety. The final phase of an avoidant's silent chase happens when they sense a shift in your energy. This is the stage where your calm, composed presence becomes the invitation they've been waiting for. They are drawn not to drama, pressure, or emotional intensity, but to the sense of peace you radiate. When you've taken the time to detach, heal, and stop chasing, something changes in their perception. Your emotional stability signals safety. It's as if they've been testing the waters for months, and now they finally feel that they can step closer without risking exposure or discomfort. Their attraction isn't impulsive, it's measured, and it always hinges on feeling secure enough to approach. Many people overlook this phase because it's subtle and often invisible. If you're only looking for dramatic gestures, avoidants don't rush in with declarations or over-the-top actions. Instead, their return is quiet, consistent, and carefully paced. They may send small messages, check in ways that seem casual, or maintain low-key contact to see how receptive you are. On the surface, it looks like ordinary communication, but in reality, it's the culmination of their internal chase. They are slowly rebuilding trust, measuring your emotional response, and ensuring that they can be close without losing the sense of control that they need to feel safe. To notice this stage, you have to tune into the rhythm of their actions rather than the volume. Look for consistency in their gestures, no matter how small. It might be a thoughtful text at a time when you didn't expect it, a subtle acknowledgement of your presence, or a quiet effort to stay in touch without overwhelming you. Most people miss it because it's not flashy or immediate, but if you pay attention, you'll notice that they are taking small steps toward connection, testing, observing, and gradually increasing closeness. This is their way of chasing you safely, respecting boundaries while still maintaining interest. The beauty of this phase is that it reveals the essence of an avoidance approach to relationships. They chase not out of fear of loss, but out of the desire to feel secure enough to engage. Your calm energy, your ability to hold your own space, and your emotional balance are what draw them back. Their efforts may appear minimal, but every subtle message, every measured interaction, is intentional. They are learning to navigate closeness without triggering their own anxieties. Recognizing this phase allows you to see the quiet dedication behind the apparent distance. Avoidants don't need grand gestures to show interest, they need safety. When you observe the pattern of slow trust building, the small but consistent signals, you understand that they are actively choosing to reconnect with care and caution. This is the final, often overlooked, phase of their chase, the moment when their desire to be near you aligns with the confidence that they can do so without emotional risk. It's subtle, intentional, and entirely silent to anyone who isn't paying close attention, but it's the clearest sign that an avoidant is quietly, consistently chasing the connection they value. If there's one thing to take away, it's that noticing subtle signals requires patience and awareness. Avoidants don't chase in obvious ways, so your first step is to slow down and observe without judgment. Don't expect dramatic gestures or clear confessions. Instead, look for small, consistent signs of engagement. A quiet message, a casual comment, or a shift in tone can all be meaningful if you pay attention. It's also important to manage your own energy. Avoidants are drawn to stability, not chaos. When you stay emotionally grounded and maintain your boundaries, you naturally create a safe space for them to show their interest. That doesn't mean bending to accommodate them. It means understanding your own needs while being mindful of subtle cues. Your calmness, consistency, and self-respect become the most powerful signals you can send. Another key point is reflection. Take the time to notice patterns in behavior over time, rather than reacting to isolated moments. Avoidants often test boundaries, withdraw, and return repeatedly, and recognizing these patterns allows you to respond thoughtfully instead of impulsively. Ask yourself what feels healthy, what aligns with your values, and what fosters connection without compromising your peace. Finally, practice patience. Avoidants move slowly and often silently, so rushing them or demanding overt proof of interest can backfire. Instead, observe, acknowledge, and protect your own emotional space. Trust develops gradually, and your ability to notice subtle signals while staying balanced will make all the difference. By combining awareness, calm energy, reflection, and patience, you'll be able to navigate interactions with an avoidant more effectively. You don't need to chase, guess, or overanalyze. Just stay present, watch for the quiet signs, and let the connection reveal itself naturally. Over time, you'll see the depth of care hidden behind subtle actions, and you'll be able to respond in a way that honors both yourself and the relationship.